I love getting all dressed up and then sitting down and realizing that none of it's visible. I got this cute little hat on, I got a cute little corset belt on, but they're all out of the screen. So it is what it is. But anyway, hi guys, I'm Eliza Wood. This is my channel and let's talk about Russian princesses. But don't worry, if you were here just for the corset, I am going to go ahead and put the time code right here so you can skip to the corset if that's what you're here for. But if not, if you're actually interested in the whole project, gotta talk about Russian princesses. And by Russian princesses, I mean the only Russian princess that I actually know about, and that would be Anastasia. Now, if you watched my last video, I mentioned that Cinderella is my favorite princess. And I will not go back on that. Cinderella will always be my favorite. But the movie that I watched more than anything as a kid growing up is Anastasia. I actually barely watched Cinderella, but that's neither here nor there. I have been seeing so many people make such beautiful cosplays for Anastasia this whole time, and I have been wanting to make an Anastasia dress. So, what better time than now to go ahead and make it? But first we gotta do the research, because I like to try to do as close to historical accuracy from that time period of the movie that I can, while also doing the movie accuracy. So, what I looked for is a Tsarina court gown. I'm not sure if I'm saying that correctly, so sorry if I'm not. Anyway, I was looking at the history of the Tsarina court gowns. There are several extant garments, but as far as I can tell, nobody's really patterned them out, unlike with the English dresses like the Victorian period and the Edwardian period. You can actually find people have looked and studied at these dresses and made them into patterns. But with the Tsarina court gowns, it doesn't seem like they have done that. It seems like they're just leaving them as they are, as far as I can tell. Honestly, I didn't do that deep of a dive, but I couldn't find any patterns. What I did find, I had more stuffing. I just went to the store and bought stuffing only to find that I had a whole bag of it in my craft room. Anyway, where was I? But what I did find is the history of the court gown. So apparently, originally it was understandably traditional Russian dress. But at some point it changed over to being actually based off of the European style. And then at some point again, it changed to kind of combine the Russian style with the European style. So at the end there was kind of a combination of the two. However, it looked like it was constant for a while since it was a traditional dress. I don't know that it like changed with the times. So although Anastasia seems to take place in a more modern France, it seems like the dress is made from a bit earlier of a time. Now the other thing to keep in mind is that there is no way that Anastasia got one of the court gowns or somebody who made the court gowns from Russia. So she had to have gotten this dress made in France based on the dresses in Russia. So there's not going to be an exact match to the Russian court gowns. It's just kind of be inspired by the Russian court gowns. All that to say, I'm pretty much gonna just go through all of my patterns, which, because it's my favorite time period, tends to stick around Victorian times, and just alter some of them so that they better match what the dress should look like. And since I'm using a Victorian pattern for the dress, I have to start with the undergarments. You should always start with the undergarments whenever you're making a historical garment, because if you don't, the structure of your body is going to be different from the structure that you would see in that historical time period, and it's just going to look slightly off. It's not going to look bad, it's just not going to look exactly like the time period you're going for. So what I need to start with is a Victorian corset, because you know I love corsets. All of that to round up to the point of this actual video is to make a corset to wear under the Anastasia gown. So if you stuck through my background of the Anastasia, or if you just skipped on to the corset, keep watching and we'll actually get along with the rest of it. First I'm going to start with drafting my corset, but I've not found a really good drafting pattern for a Victorian corset. They usually just have some pictures of this is what a pattern would look like online, or you would have to buy a pattern, which I don't want to spend money. So instead I'll draft a regular corset and just do my best to make it in the shape of a Victorian corset. I'll be using the Foundations Revealed Corset Drafting Method, which is a step-by-step method. But unfortunately, I got it for free online several years ago and I downloaded it to my computer so I wouldn't have to keep looking for it. And I tried to look for it in order to link it down below, and apparently it is no longer free available on the internet. I don't know if it's available on the Foundations Revealed website if you do the subscription, but I have heard the Foundations Revealed website is a good place to go for making corsets and stuff like that if you want like help and a good community to work with. Of course, that's all word of mouth because I actually have not done it myself because, again, I'm too cheap for that. Once the corset is drafted, I made a horrible mistake. I went straight to the cutting out of the lining and fashion layers. Never do that, especially on a corset. You want to make sure that that thing fits you correctly, because if it doesn't, it's gonna be uncomfortable. Starting with the lining layer, I outlined my pieces using something I know can be washed away. In this case, a pencil, but on the fashion layer I used chalk. Then I transfer the pattern to the other side using transfer paper and a roller pokey thing. I actually don't know what this thing is called. This gives me the advantage that I don't have to measure out an exact seam allowance, so I can just cut around my pattern and move on. And then using pins, I can make sure that the lines line up on both sides, and then follow my line for the sewing process. Then cut the seam allowances short and trim some notches around the curve to allow movement. Always make sure you do this on a curve, because if you don't, you're going to get some weird buckling. And then I attach the lining layer by making sure the seams lined up and then stitching in the ditch. Now, since I have two layers, I can create boning channels by sewing lines around the seams and in some places in the middle of the pattern piece. I was really just guessing on where best to add the channels, although I did reference a couple of different Victorian corsets to see where they would have added the channels. While doing that, I'm also adding a cute pink twill tape to give the waist a bit more strength. It's got shinies in it. Now to add the bias to the bottom. I don't want the stitching to show at all, so I'm going to start by sewing the bias tape to the fashion layer. I'm not exactly following the pattern at this point, for the simple reason that not all my pieces lined up like they were supposed to, but I'm trying to stay as close to it as I can. Then, after cutting the fabric short, I flipped the bias tape to the other side and felled it in place by hand. I like this particular stitch, if only because it sounds like I've felled some beast or another, but also because it's a relatively easy stitch that won't show on the fashion layer as long as I make sure to only grab the lining. Since the bottom is now closed, I can measure out and add my boning. I'm going cheap this time around and only using zip ties for my boning, but I'll regret that later as well. Spoilers! I have had some bad experiences lately with my boning poking through the fabric no matter which kind I choose, so this time I'm going to try really hard to round and smooth out the edges. Luckily, since this is just plastic, I can do this with a nail file. Well, I'm slightly irritated. I have these nice gold grommets that I can use for the corset, but but unfortunately I can't find the thing that clamps them down. So I have the grommets, but no way to actually put them on. So my options are to do silver grommets or to hand sew the grommets. And I would prefer to not have to hand sew them, but the entirety of the decorative pieces on this corset is gonna be gold. So I don't wanna do silver eyelets and then have them stand out against the rest of the corset. So I guess I'm gonna have to do some hand sewn eyelets. Not looking forward to it. Okay, so as much as I complained, hand sewing grommets isn't actually the ordeal I made it out to be, but it is very time consuming. First I'll open the hole using my awl, then I'll double up my gold thread and poke it through the fabric. I don't know if you're supposed to do this from the right side or the wrong side, but I think it looks better when I do it with the wrong side facing up. So I'll stick the needle down through the wrong side, then loop it through the open hole, and while pulling the stitch taut, I'll make sure it wrapped around the thread and make a tiny little knot. Then back down through the lining layer right next to the previous prick, and so on and so forth until the hole is entirely covered. While doing so, always make sure to poke the awl through the hole every now and again, just to make sure the hole doesn't close up. Since we didn't break any of the threads, it does have a tendency to kind of shrink as you go. It probably would have been a good idea to draw a circle around the hole just to make sure everything was even, but I didn't, so it's a little bit messy. Still, I think it looks kind of nice. Alright, I have an issue, and while I was expecting this issue, I was expecting it to be easier to fix. So I didn't make a mock-up, as you know, and that's biting me in the butt, which I was kind of expecting, but I didn't want to waste the time doing a mock-up, and now I'm very much regretting it. So what happened was the bust is way too big. The way the pattern calls for it, from the bust you're supposed to do a straight line up on the pattern pieces, but that really only works if you have a smaller bust. For a bigger bust, you really have to take it in at the top so it actually does a curve. So what actually happened when I put it on the first time was this whole bust area just flopped over. And it didn't look good, obviously. So, what I'm gonna have to do is I'm gonna have to add some darts. I've kind of pinned it here so that it sticks up where it should. I think I'll probably add them more evenly throughout, though for the most part I'll do it out over here because I don't hate the look of this right now. I only pinned the one side, so this side's still pretty loose. But I think this looks a lot better. But that dart looks horrible, and especially where the bone is kind of curving around the bust. So that just looks bad. I'm gonna have to fix that somehow or other. Hopefully I can just put some darts in and it will be well. I don't know though, so we'll have to see. The other thing I'm noticing, I think I would have preferred a longer line corset. Perhaps I got my hip in the wrong place. Probably I'm so bad at taking measurements. Or maybe my waist is sitting too high, I'm not really sure. But either way, the corset is too short. So you can see my hip sticking out right here, because it's not as noticeable when you have clothes on, but when you don't, it sticks out. So it's not the best. It will work for now. So if I can, I think tomorrow I have a day off because it's Juneteenth. So if I can't get this corset done tomorrow, I'll probably give up on it and use the Cinderella corset because it's the same supposed shape. So we'll see how it goes. I'm really hoping to still use this one because it matches the dress, and honestly I've been working on it for 2 weeks and I would hate to lose it. So we'll see. Alright, so not the prettiest fix. I've only done this side. I have not done this side, so this side's still pinned. It's not the prettiest fix. The boning isn't as straight as I would want it to be anymore. It was a nice, pretty straight look before. And then it's a little wrinkling in the front here. But I think it'll do as long as it'll keep everything in place. That's what matters, right? It'll work. I do wish I had made it a little higher at the side. I thought I had to go lower so that I would have room for my arms, but ugh, I don't like it. Alright, I think that worked. There's still a bit of mushrooming coming up over here on the sides, but there's nothing I can do to fix that, so that's just gonna be a thing. The bust looks a whole lot better. Right now I'm wearing it inside out because I'm gonna draw the line that I need for my binding on the inside, so I wanted to put it on inside out so I could just make sure that the line was gonna be straight-ish. It's not amazing. There's issues with it. The boning looks weird. I already mentioned that. I think that the pink layer didn't get fully darted, so there's a couple places where it's wrinkling weirdly, but other than that, I think it looks fine. I'm probably going to tack down the darts just with a quick cross stitch or something. Maybe I'll do it while I'm flossing. I don't know, haven't figured it out yet, but it looks good. Also, I changed the way that I have the corset laced. A historical Victorian corset, I think, was either usually laced so that it was tight at the bottom or tight at the top, but a modern corset is usually tied at the waist. So I actually changed it so that it would be tight at the waist. I don't have it tied right now because I'm going to take it off in a minute. And that is actually really helping with the shape of the corset. So now I'm getting a much better waist and I'm not getting as much mushrooming outside of the hip because I can let this be a little looser and just have the waist be what's getting the most tension of the ties. Okay, now that it fits well, I can finish off the top and then do some decorative details. With the help of my executive producer, of course. Now, I do not think that there's nearly enough gold on this darling, and what's better than a decorative detail that actually serves a purpose? That's what flossing is for. Flossing is a method where you add some stitches around the boning that reinforces the fabric there. I looked at several different designs, but eventually decided on a simple diagonal stitch across the bottom of the bone. Still, I couldn't resist at least one little bit of extra detail. Originally, I wanted this to look like a feather, but I didn't think it would do much to stop the boning from working free, so I added some leaves at the bottom, and now it looks like wheat. I only wish that I had made sure to have a better angle so you could actually see what I was doing. One thing that I've noticed on a lot of historical corsets is a bit of lace detail at the top. I'm not really sure what the purpose was for it, but I put it there to try to disguise a bit of that top line when this corset is under the tight bodice. Unfortunately, I forgot to film me hand stitching the lace in place, so instead I'm just going to lace through this gold ribbon to give it that last bit of shine. Alright, here she is. I am overall happy with her. Definitely she could be better if I hadn't made some pretty crucial mistakes at the very beginning. Mainly if I had actually drafted it first instead of jumping right onto the fashion layer. I don't know what I was thinking that, oh, it'll be fine, I can alter it when I try it on, and then forgetting to try it on, so there we have it. Anyway, so this is her. I changed the cording in the back to be this like gold rope here. I like, it's very pretty, however it is a lot it's a lot harder to actually tighten it. So usually this corset, when I'm wearing it with a smoother lacing, which I had a white lacing on it so I could tie it really tight, it gets a lot tighter than it is currently. And also that rope was actually scratching at my hands as I was tightening it. The one nice thing about the rougher rope is that it catches on the grommets a little easier. The tension will stay as you're tightening it, and it makes it a little easier to tighten it in the fact that the tension will stay, but harder to tighten it because it's rough going through the grommets. And then some other issues is the obvious fit issue. The main problem with the fit, lighting. I'm sorry about the lighting. I can't find any of my ring lights, and it's that time of day when all the clouds are going around and the sunlight is going in and out. Some obvious fit issues. The main problem with the fit, I think I was thinking that the front of the corset was going to be higher up, so I took it down to go underneath the arm, because it's no fun to have something rubbing against your arm that's stiff like this. But because I took it down, there was nothing up here to really pull this to be flatter. So it really should be a bit flatter instead of just hanging like that. But I'm really happy with the lace at the top. I think it's really cute. And also the little detail parts down here, although you probably can't see it. This, of course, is not the type of outfit I would wear with this corset, but I had to put something on. So lessons learned from this corset: make a mock-up. Especially with corsets. With like skirts and things, you should still make a mock-up, but I'm a lot more confident skipping over a mock-up on a skirt because the only thing you really need to fit, as long as it's not a pencil skirt, is the waist, and that you can just kind of adjust as you need to. But things like corsets especially, which have structure and are trying to create a certain shape, make a mock-up. And I know this, I have made this mistake in the past, but I was trying to get this done in time to take this whole project to Dragon Con, which means I had to do this pretty quickly in order to be able to move on to Anastasia, because right now it is the middle of August, almost the middle of August, and I technically finished the corset in July, but I didn't film the finishing touches until now. And Dragon Con is at the end of August, so trying really hard to make it in time, but we'll see how it goes. But I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you're interested in seeing any more of Anastasia, you subscribe, or even if you're interested in seeing any more of my projects, you go ahead and subscribe. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, suggestions, anything of the like, please comment down below. And of course, if you're interested in checking out any of my other platforms, I have the different types of platforms down below in the info bar, whatever that thing is called. But I'll see you in the next video.